Where legends breathe again. Eld myth. Before the map, before the flag, before the wall, there was the field, a place of churned earth and settling dust, a liminal space between victory and defeat, order and chaos, life and the silent afterward. It is here, in the raw openness of aftermath, that humanity's deepest fears took shape, not from the darkness of the deep forest or the ocean's abyss, but from the very ground where our greatest conflicts were laid to rest. This is a bestiary of the battlefield, not of soldiers but of the watchers, the entities born not from ancient wilderness but from the psychic fallout of human strife. They are the spiritual carrion eaters, the divine spectators, the guardians of the terrible threshold where a warrior becomes a memory. To see them was to understand that war was not an event, but an ecosystem, a fertile ground for gods, monsters, and cursed souls. We will walk this haunted ground. We will meet 5 beings sculpted from iron, blood, and collective dread. The goddess who is the battle's fever dream and its final sigh. The demon born from a raven's feast. The dead who refuse the barrow's peace. The celestial warriors consumed by their own glorious rage. And the colossal guardian whose benevolent gaze is indistinguishable from ultimate threat. They are united by domain, by function, and by a truth we often soften, that in the stories of old, protection and terror were 2 faces of the same awful coin. To be shielded was to be witnessed in your most vulnerable, violent moment. Some tales have been simplified, their edges sanded down for modern ears. But the oldest versions remain, whispering from the soil, reminding us that some fields are never truly empty, and some spectators never truly leave. The land is Ireland, but the terrain is the human spirit stretched to its breaking point. Here, war was not a political tool, but a sacred, terrible storm, and at its eye stood a sovereign, a phantom, a prophet of blood. She was not 1 but 3, the sisters of fate, weaving not with thread but with the lives of warriors. Yet in the frenzy of combat they merged into a single, overwhelming presence, the Morrigan, the great queen, the phantom queen. She did not dwell in a she-mound or a misty lake. Her habitat was the fever dream of the battle itself. The moment when the shield wall shattered, when the individual was swallowed by the roaring collective. You felt her in the adrenaline-sharpened air, smelled her in the copper tang of blood and sweat, heard her in the cacophony of clashing iron and dying screams. She was the atmosphere of predestined violence. To see her was to receive a verdict. She could appear as a stunning, terrifying woman clad in glistening war gear, her eyes holding the cold light of distant stars. More often, she was perceived as a shapeshifter, the washerwoman at the forge scrubbing the blood-soaked armor of the doomed, the sleek milk-white heifer leading armies to their fate, or most famously the crow. Not a mere bird, but a vast, intelligent carrion eater, her feathers slick with battlefield mist, her gaze calculating the harvest. Her behavior was not about mindless slaughter, but about curation. She incited the battle fury, she whispered cowardice into the hearts of champions, she celebrated the most glorious deaths. An encounter with her was rarely direct combat, it was an omen. To be chosen by her was both a blessing and a curse, a guarantee of legendary status, paid for with a brutal end. She offered alliances to heroes like Ku Chulainn, and when spurned, her vengeance was the meticulous unraveling of a destiny. The fear she inspired was intertwined with a desperate reverence. Rituals were performed not to summon her, but to discern her will, to plead for favor. She represented the raw, amoral sovereignty of the land itself, which demanded sacrifice. Psychologically, she is the embodiment of war's chaotic divinity, the understanding that conflict is a force of nature, as indifferent and as beautiful as a lightning storm, presided over by an intelligence that finds human concepts of morality quaint. Her legacy is the haunting understanding that courage alone cannot save you. That fate, on the battlefield, has a face, and it is often smiling a cruel, beautiful smile as it points to your name on its list. Cross the sea to the damp forests and peat bogs of ancient Denmark. Here, in the aftermath of a different kind of war, a more intimate horror took root. The battle is over. The victors have claimed their spoils, the dead are being counted, and the ravens descend as they always do to begin their solemn work. But from this most natural of acts, folklore spun a creature of profound, unnatural cunning, the Valravn. Its habitat is the immediate, lonely aftermath. The field hours after the clash, when the moaning has ceased and the only sound is the rustle of feathers and the tear of cloth. It is born from a specific taboo act. If a raven consumes the heart of a slain child left on the battlefield, it undergoes a grotesque metamorphosis. The bird sheds its pure animal nature and becomes something in between, a demon wearing feathers. Physically, a Valravn might initially appear as a larger, more sinister raven, its eyes holding a cruel, knowing glint. In its more advanced form, it is a chilling hybrid, the body of a wolf or a large dog, yet clad in sleek black feathers, with powerful wings and a raptor's beak. It moves with an uncanny silence, a ghost in the twilight of the recent dead. Its behavior is defined by a hunger that transcends the physical. It craves not just flesh, but power, knowledge, and a twisted form of completion. Legends say it seeks to become fully human or fully supernatural by obtaining a Christian relic or devouring the heart of a hero. It lures travelers deep into the woods with mimicked cries or phantom lights, leading them to their doom. It is a trickster, but one born of tragedy and corruption, its intelligence focused solely on fulfilling its cursed appetite. Encounters with the Valravn are stories of betrayal by the natural world. The raven, a common sight, becomes an omen of a far deeper sickness in the land, a spiritual pollution caused by the unresolved trauma of battle, particularly the death of the innocent. The fear it inspired was a quiet, creeping dread. It wasn't a god to be worshipped, but a mistake to be avoided, a consequence of leaving the dead unattended. Symbolically, the Valravn is the curse of the unmourned. It represents the battlefield's poison seeping into the ecosystem, transforming a simple scavenger into a conscious predator. It is the lingering guilt of a community, the forgotten victim given claws and wings. Its legacy is a warning: do not leave your conflicts unfinished. Clean your fields, bury your dead, or watch as the very symbols of death evolve into something far more intelligent and far more hungry. Travel north to the fjords and longships of the Norse world. Here, a warrior's death in battle was a ticket to Valhalla. But what of those who fell to sickness or age or treachery? What of the warrior whose pride was so immense it could not be contained by mere death? Their afterlife was not a hall of feasting, but a cold, dark mound. And from these barrows the Draugr clawed its way back. The Draugr's habitat is the grave mound, the Hogger, but this is no peaceful tomb. It is a sunless, cramped kingdom where the dead king guards his treasure with eternal, jealous rage. The environment is one of stagnant air, the smell of wet earth and old iron, the crushing weight of the soil above. The Draugr does not haunt battlefields. It brings the battlefield to the doorstep of the living. It is the war that refuses to end, privatized and entombed. Its physical presence is a perversion of the heroic form. The Draugr is not a skeleton, but a swollen, corpse-like giant, its flesh blackened as if by funeral fire or bloated from its underwater grave. It possesses uncanny strength, can shapeshift into mist or animals, and its touch brings decay, disease, and a cold that freezes the soul. It is heavy, its movements described as causing the ground to shake. It is death, not as an absence, but as a crushing, physical surplus. Its temperament is pure, undiluted malice and greed. It attacks not for hunger but for dominion. It kills shepherds and livestock, destroys homes, and defends its burial hoard with psychotic fervor. Encounters were less about chance and more about provocation, disturbing a burial site, claiming a dead man's property. The stories are manuals for survival: how to wrestle a Draugr, how to lure it into sunlight, how to decapitate and burn it, placing its ashes in the sea. The fear was of a social and spiritual contract broken. The Draugr was a neighbor from hell, a lesson in respecting the dead precisely because they could become so powerfully, physically disrespectful of the living. It represented the dangerous, lingering identity of the individual ego, the sin of pride that could outlast the body itself. Its legacy is the archetype of the physical undead terror. It is the zombie's ancient, more powerful ancestor, a creature not of mindless infection, but of very specific personal grievance. The Draugr reminds us that some warriors fight not for glory or gods, but simply because they cannot, will not, conceive of an existence where they do not own, control, and dominate, even in death. Now journey to a cosmic scale, to the ancient Vedic and Hindu cosmology, where the battlefield is not a patch of earth, but the fabric of reality itself. Here, in the primordial struggle between order and chaos, light and energy, we find the Asuras. They are not mere demons of fairy tale, but fallen celestial beings, cousins and eternal rivals to the Devas, the gods. Their domain is the sublime and terrifying space of celestial warfare. Their habitat is the layers of existence beneath the heavenly realms, the Patala, often depicted as magnificent, jeweled underground cities, or the shifting, volatile landscapes of cosmic descent. They dwell in splendor and profound power, but it is a power born of tapas, fervent asceticism and meditation, twisted by ambition, pride, and jealousy. Their environment resonates with the heat of concentrated will and the thunder of thwarted desire. An Asura's physical form is that of a god, but warped by their inner nature. They can be majestic, multi-armed warriors clad in golden armor, riding fantastic chariots or elephants, or they can manifest more terrifying aspects, fanged, dark-skinned, wielding weapons of fiery destruction. Their scale is monumental. Their battles with the Devas shake the mountains and churn the oceans. They are power incarnate, but power without the responsibility of maintaining cosmic balance. Their behavior is defined by a titanic, often sympathetic struggle. They seek Amrita, the nectar of immortality, not out of petty evil, but from a desire to claim their rightful place, to overturn a celestial order they perceive as unjust. They are brilliant, skilled, passionate, and bound by their own egos. Encounters with humans are rare on a personal level, but humanity feels the shockwaves of their wars, in natural disasters, in epics of strife. To be caught in an Asura's path is to be annihilated by forces beyond comprehension. The reverence and fear they inspired were part of a grand theological framework. They were worshipped in some traditions, recognized as necessary opposites. They represent the indispensable, chaotic, energetic principle of the cosmos, the Rajasic quality of ambition, action, and desire. Psychologically, they are the shadow of divinity itself, the glorious, destructive potential of unbridled will, the brilliant mind that cannot accept limits. The aftermath of their stories is not mere victory or defeat, but a recalibration of the universe. Each conflict with the Devas reestablishes a temporary dynamic balance. Their legacy is the profound understanding that chaos is not the absence of order, but its fierce, intelligent competitor. The Asura is the mythic embodiment of the question: what happens when the warrior, endowed with all the power of a god, refuses to serve any purpose but his own? Finally, we arrive at the gates of ancient Mesopotamia, not on a battlefield of mud and blood, but at the threshold of empire itself. Carved from alabaster, towering over approaching dignitaries and conquered peoples alike, stands the Lamassu, a being of profound contradiction, a protector whose very presence is a threat, a benevolent spirit whose form inspires primal dread. Its habitat is architectural, political. It dwells in the liminal space of palace entrances, city gates, and temple doors. Its environment is one of carved stone, dust, and burning sun. It does not roam. It is planted, an eternal sentinel at the border between the ordered kingdom and the chaotic outside, between the sacred and the profane. It exists to be seen, to be passed under, to impose an idea. Its physical presence is engineered for psychological impact. A colossal hybrid form, the body of a bull or lion symbolizing immense strength and earthly power, the wings of an eagle representing divine authority and speed, the bearded head of a human king embodying intelligence and sovereignty. It is often depicted with 5 legs, standing firm when viewed from the front, striding forward when viewed from the side. It is always in motion, even in stillness. Its behavior is one of eternal, silent vigilance. It was meant to ward off malevolent supernatural influences and intimidate humanity's enemies. To encounter a Lamassu was to submit to the power it represented. For a citizen, it was a guardian. For a captive or a rival, it was the first and last declaration of the king's absolute, divinely sanctioned power. Its gaze was not personal, it was institutional. The fear and reverence it commanded were inseparable. It was an idol to be placated, a symbol to be respected, and a weapon of psychological warfare. It represented the ultimate fusion of the bestial, the human, and the divine into a single instrument of state control. It was protection through overwhelming, immutable presence. Psychologically, it is the embodiment of the state as a living, breathing, watching monster, benign to those within its grace, terrifying to all others. Its legacy is the architecture of awe. It taught humanity how to build its fears and its ambitions into the very doorway. The Lamassu whispers that true protection is not a gentle hand, but an unblinking eye atop a form that could shatter you with a step. It asks the unsettling question: can you distinguish the face of your protector from the face of your conqueror? In its silent stone, the chaos of the battlefield is filtered, refined, and petrified into permanent, imposing order. Silence now. Let the voices of the myths fade into the landscapes that bred them. The camera of the mind pulls back. We see the Irish moor not as a scenic vista but as a vast, open theater. The wind sweeps across the heather, whispering through stone circles that stand like forgotten sentinels. This is the Morrigan stage, empty now, but charged with the memory of frenzy. We drift over the Danish bog at twilight. The water is black and still, mirroring a bruised sky. A single, ragged feather floats on the surface, caught in the roots of a drowned tree. This is the Valravn's nursery, a place where death is absorbed and mutates. We hover before the Norse burial mound, a grassy hump in a silent forest, its entrance sealed with a single moss-covered stone. The air here is colder. Nothing moves. This is the Draugr's kingdom, a pocket of defiance beneath the earth. We soar through the cosmic void, past nebulae that swirl like the aftermath of a titanic explosion. Here, there is no sound, only the silent expansion of light and the slow dance of shattered realms. This is the Asura's playground, a canvas too vast for mortal consequence. Finally, we settle in the desert. The city is dust, its walls melted back into clay. But amid the rubble, a single, colossal stone foot remains, toppled from its plinth. The rest of the guardian is gone, but its footprint remains, a fossil of imposed order. The sand, patient and endless, slowly fills the impression. These are the fields. They are quiet, but stand in them long enough, and you feel the weight of the watchmen who are, perhaps, only waiting for the right kind of noise to return. What pattern emerges from these 5 watchers of the threshold? They are not a random collection of monsters. They are a spectrum of response to humanity's most volatile act, organized violence. At one end we have the Morrigan and the Asura, beings of celestial consequence. They represent war as a divine, cosmic force. The Morrigan is its spirit, its fever, its fatalistic poet. The Asura is its ambition, its glorious, rebellious energy. They are war personified as a sovereign intelligence, far above the individual soldier. They watch because the conflict itself is their domain, their expression. In the middle, we have the Valravn and the Draugr, beings of physical corruption. They represent the battlefield's poison leaking into the world. The Valravn is the corruption of nature, the scavenger becoming a demon. The Draugr is the corruption of the self, the individual refusing dissolution. They are not gods of war. They are its waste products, evolving into new forms of terror. They watch because they are hungry, and they were created by our neglect. And at the far end, we have the Lamassu, the being of imposed order. It represents the attempt to cage the chaos of the battlefield, to freeze its terrible energy into a permanent, static guardian. It is war's aftermath institutionalized, its power channeled into a statue that says, "This violence is over, and I am its monument and its guarantee." Together, they form a complete cycle. The celestial beings incite and oversee the chaos. The corrupted beings are born from its mismanagement. The ordered being tries to seal it away to prevent its return. They are all facets of the same unbearable truth. That violence on a grand scale generates its own ecology. It attracts divinities, spawns monsters, and demands idols. We do not imagine these beings to frighten ourselves. We imagine them because, on some deep level, we have always sensed they were there, the permanent residents of the fields we only temporarily occupy. These ancient watchers have not faded. They have simply traded stone and vellum for pixels and polygons. The modern fantasy landscape is their new, digital afterlife. The Morrigan's DNA is everywhere, in the raven queens and goddesses of fate that oversee massive battle systems in role-playing games. Her shape-shifting and ominous prophecies fuel countless narratives of doomed heroes and inevitable wars. She is the archetype of the GM, the game master, orchestrating conflict from a place of divine indifference. The Valravn's twisted form flits through dark fantasy bestiaries, a staple creature of cursed forests and haunted marshes. Its trickster nature and avian wolf hybrid physique have inspired monsters from The Witcher to Dark Souls, where the corruption of nature is a central theme. It is the perfect enemy for a morally gray world. The Draugr gave its name and its entire existential package to one of the most iconic enemies in modern gaming, the Draugr of Skyrim. It provided the blueprint for the physical, grave-dwelling, treasure-guarding undead that has populated fantasy for decades. It turned Viking burial ethics into a dungeon-crawling mechanic. The Asura's tragic grandeur fuels entire factions and character arcs. Their divine rivalry, their fallen grace, their immense power and pride are the cornerstone of stories in franchises like Final Fantasy or Dota. They allow us to explore the villain who is not evil, but magnificently, catastrophically wronged. And the Lamassu. Its imposing form is the direct ancestor of every gargoyle on a cathedral, every monumental statue guardian in a fantasy city or temple. It taught us how architecture can intimidate. Its hybrid design is the foundation for the entire concept of the chimera in fantastic art. The fear has become fascination. The ritual avoidance has become a quest marker. We no longer leave offerings to appease them. We craft builds and strategies to defeat them for experience points. But in this translation, their core function remains. They are still the keepers of thresholds, the guardians of the digital dungeons and story battles we choose to enter voluntarily now for fun. So what do these 5 watchers in their grim chorus tell us about ourselves? They tell us that humanity has always understood war as a generative act, not just destructive, but creative. It creates new gods from collective adrenaline. It creates new monsters from unresolved trauma. It creates new art, new architecture, new stories from the desperate need to make meaning from the meaningless churn of violence. The Morrigan and the Asura speak to our need to deify the chaos, to give it a face and a will, because randomness is more terrifying than a cruel intelligence. It is easier to accept a prophecy than to accept that the good and brave can die for no reason at all. The Valravn and the Draugr speak to our deep-seated fear of pollution, both spiritual and physical, that the act of killing leaves a stain that doesn't just fade but evolves, that the forgotten dead and the unchecked consequences will come back, smarter and hungrier, to demand their due. The Lamassu speaks to our ultimate feudal ambition, to control the uncontrollable, to take the wild, terrifying energy of the battlefield and carve it into a stationary, loyal dog, to build a door so imposing it convinces us the chaos is forever on the other side. We still need these creatures because the battlefield in all its forms still exists. It exists in geopolitics, in boardrooms, in the fractures of society, and in the human heart. These mythological beings are our psychological antibodies. They are the shapes we give to the unspeakable pressures of conflict, sovereignty, and death. By giving them form, The crow, the hybrid, the swollen corpse, the fallen angel, the stone bull. We perform an ancient act of therapy. We look at the field and we say, I see you there, I name you. And in the naming, for a moment, I am not your victim but your witness. The story ends where it began, on the field. The sun has set. The modern world is silent, a distant hum beyond the hills. The wind has died down. The last light is a thin, lavender line on the horizon. Look at the grass. It has grown over the old ruts, softened the outlines of the trenches. It is just a field again. But wait. In the corner of your eye, a shadow moves, not with the wind, but against it. A larger, darker shape among the gathering stars might be a cloud, or it might be something pausing in its flight to look down. The air near the old barrow mound feels a few degrees colder than the surrounding night. The silence here is not empty. It is a listening silence. The watchers are not gone. They were never about the battle itself. They were about the space it leaves behind, the charged emptiness, the threshold. They are in the pause before the argument escalates, in the chilling quiet after the news report of a distant war. In the moment you stand before a monumental, imposing door, wondering what power lies behind it. They are the shapes in the liminal places of the human experience. So the next time you find yourself in an empty, quiet place that feels strangely full, listen. You may hear the rustle of feathers not born of any bird. You may feel the gaze of something that understands conflict as an environment, and you as a temporary part of its ecology. The field is empty. The field is watching. Walk softly. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.